The morning sun stretched its soft light across the quiet home of Keanu Reeves. The house was simple, peaceful, not filled with gold or marble like people might imagine for a world-famous actor. Instead, it was warm, humble, with books stacked on shelves, photographs on the walls, and a feeling of calm in every corner. But inside this peace was a story few knew. It was about a boy, Keanu's son, Ethan, just 9 years old. Ethan was born with a condition that made him mute. He could hear the world, he could feel its beauty, but he could not form words. His eyes, however, spoke volumes, gentle, deep, always carrying more emotion than sentences ever could. For Keanu, Ethan was the center of his life. Everything he did, every role he accepted, every late night on set, every choice he made was with his son in mind. Raising a mute child was not easy. There were days filled with frustration, moments of sadness when Ethan wanted to say something but could not, and times when the silence felt heavier than any sound. But through it all, Keanu never gave up. He learned to listen not just with his ears, but with his heart. To help care for Ethan, especially when Keanu was away filming, he hired a maid named Sofia. She was young, in her early 30s, with a kind face and gentle manner. She had been with them for less than a year, and she always treated Ethan with care. She cooked his favorite meals, helped him with drawings, and never made him feel less. Because of his silence, still Keanu kept a watchful eye. His son's world was fragile, and he trusted few people to step into it. The story begins on a day that seemed like any other, yet it would change everything. Keanu entered the living room quietly, holding a fresh cup of coffee, expected to find silence, perhaps the sound of Ethan flipping pages of his sketchbook. Instead, what he saw made him freeze. Sofia was sitting on the carpet beside Ethan. She leaned close, speaking softly. Ethan's wide eyes were locked on her face, his hands resting nervously on his knees. Keanu stood in the doorway, unseen, listening. "You don't have to be afraid," Sofia whispered gently, her voice calm and steady. "Your voice is still inside you. Maybe one day it will come out. And even if it doesn't, you're still enough. You're still strong." Ethan's lips trembled as if he wanted to respond. No sound came, but his eyes filled with tears. Sofia reached out, taking his small hand in hers. "Do you want to try?" she asked softly. "Just one word. No one will judge you. Not me, not your father." Keanu's breath caught. His heart pounded in his chest. For years, he had watched his son struggle, had prayed for a miracle, had wondered if Ethan would ever speak. And now, here was this quiet maid, this woman he had trusted with daily tasks. Daring to reach into his son's silence in a way no one had before, Ethan opened his mouth, sound rough, broken, almost like a whisper of wind escaped. Not clear, not formed, but it was the first sound his father had ever heard from him. Sofia's eyes filled with tears. She squeezed his hand gently. "See, you can do it. Even if it's small, it's still your voice." Keanu's chest tightened. He wanted to step in, to embrace his son, to thank Sofia for what she had done. But he also knew this was fragile, too fragile to interrupt. So he stayed in the doorway, silent, his own eyes burning. Ethan tried again, pushing harder this time. A faint sound, almost like "da," slipped through. His face turned red with effort, tears sliding down his cheeks. Sofia whispered quickly, encouragingly, "Yes, Ethan, yes. That's it. Don't stop." And then it happened. Single, shaky word, so soft that anyone else might have missed it. "Dad." Keanu's world shattered in that moment. His son, his quiet, gentle, mute son, had called for him. He stepped forward, his cup slipping from his hand and crashing onto the floor, forgotten. Ethan looked up, startled, his lips still trembling. Keanu fell to his knees, pulling his son into his arms. Tears poured freely down his face. "I heard you," he whispered. "Oh my God, Ethan, I heard you." Ethan clung to him tightly, his small body shaking. Sofia sat back, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. The silence that had once filled their home was broken, placed by the sound of hope. But even as Keanu held his son close, his heart overwhelmed with gratitude, a thought flickered in his mind. Why had Ethan chosen this moment, this person, to open his voice? What had Sofia said or done that unlocked something he himself could not? It was a miracle but also a mystery, and Keanu knew, deep inside, that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test his faith, his love, and his understanding in ways he had never imagined. The next morning, the world felt different inside Keanu's home. Sunlight streamed brighter through the curtains. The sound of birds seemed sharper, and every moment carried a strange energy. Yet Keanu hardly slept the night before. He had stayed awake, replaying Ethan's trembling voice in his mind, Dad. It was only one word, broken and fragile, but it was more valuable than every award, every success, every applause he had ever received in his life. At breakfast, Keanu watched Ethan closely. The boy sat at the table with his sketchbook, his eyes lowered as he doodled shapes and small figures. Sofia placed a plate in front of him and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Ethan," she said softly. Keanu held his breath, waiting. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then glanced at his father. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to repeat what he had done the night before, but no sound came. He quickly looked back at his sketchbook. Sofia didn't push. She just nodded and said, "That's okay, whenever you're ready." Keanu felt both hope and fear twisting inside him. He had heard his son speak once. Would he ever hear it again? Was it a one-time miracle, or the start of something bigger? Later that day, while Keanu was in his study reading through film scripts, he heard faint voices drifting from the living room. He set the papers aside and quietly moved closer. Sofia was sitting with Ethan again, speaking gently, her tone patient and steady. "You don't need to be afraid of failing," she said. "Every sound you make is a step forward. Every step forward is something to celebrate." Ethan looked uncertain, but then he lifted a small wooden block from the floor and held it up. His lips moved slightly. Sofia leaned closer, nodding encouragingly. "Try even a whisper." Keanu's heart pounded as he listened. Ethan's mouth opened and a faint sound escaped. It wasn't a word this time, just a rough breath that almost carried a letter. Still, Sofia clapped her hands softly. "Wonderful, Ethan. I'm proud of you." The boy's eyes lit up. Keanu saw it, the spark of confidence, the tiny flicker of pride. But what struck Keanu the most was how Ethan looked at Sofia. There was trust there, a trust so strong it almost startled him. For months, therapists, specialists, even doctors had tried to encourage Ethan to speak, but he had resisted them all. Yet here he was, opening up to a maid, someone outside of medical titles or clinical rooms. Keanu's single quotes, thoughts grew heavier. Why her? What does she see in him, or he in her, that the rest of us missed? That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Keanu sat with Sofia in the kitchen. The air was quiet, only the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Finally he spoke. "Yesterday, what you did with Ethan, I don't know how to thank you." Sofia shook her head. "Please don't thank me. It was all him. I only gave him space." Keanu leaned forward. "But you've done something no one else has. Therapists, specialists, they tried everything. But he chose to try with you. Why?" Sofia lowered her gaze, her hands folding nervously. "Because I don't see him as broken. I don't look at him and see a child who can't. I just see a boy who is still learning. Maybe Ethan feels that." Her words sank deep into Keanu's heart. He realized she was right. Perhaps Ethan didn't need pressure or technical exercises or constant reminders of what he lacked. Perhaps he needed someone who simply believed he was already enough. Even without words, yet alongside his gratitude, a new feeling crept in. Worry. Because if Ethan's progress depended so heavily on Sofia, what would happen if she left? Or worse, what if she had her own motives, hidden behind her kindness? He hated himself for thinking it, but fame had taught him to be cautious. Not everyone who entered his life came with pure intentions. The next day, something unusual happened. Keanu returned from a short trip to the market and found Ethan in the garden with Sofia. The boy stood among the flowers, holding a small toy car, and Sofia was crouched beside him. "Say it," she encouraged gently. "Car. You can do it," Ethan's lips moved. A faint broken syllable came out. Keanu froze at the doorway, overwhelmed. It was imperfect, barely a word, but it was progress. Sofia smiled, tears in her eyes. Yes, Ethan, yes, that's wonderful. She hugged him gently. Keanu stepped forward then, his voice cracking. Ethan, my boy. The child looked at him, a shy smile on his face. Keanu walked quickly across the garden and knelt beside him, pulling him into his arms. You're doing so well. I'm so proud of you. But as he held his son, his eyes lifted to Sofia. There was something in her expression, joy, yes, but also something unreadable. It's almost like a secret she carried deep within her. That night, Keanu could not sleep again. He sat in the living room, the clock ticking past midnight, his mind restless. Ethan's progress was a blessing, but he could not escape the gnawing question, why now? Why Sofia? He remembered the first day she had arrived. The way she had looked around the house quietly, the softness in her eyes when she first met Ethan. She had said very little then, but perhaps there was more to her story than he knew. The silence of the house was broken by a sound of faint creak on the staircase. Keanu turned his head quickly. Sofia stood there halfway down as if she had been watching him. Their eyes met in the dim light. Can't sleep? She asked softly. No, Keanu replied. Too much on my mind. She hesitated, then whispered, Me too. And in that moment, Keanu realized that Sofia was not just helping Ethan. She was carrying her own hidden burdens, and somehow those burdens were tied to the miracle unfolding in his home. The days that followed were filled with small moments of wonder. Ethan's progress was slow but steady. Sometimes it was only a broken syllable, other times just a sound close to a word, but every attempt mattered. Every effort pulled him further from silence. Keanu cherished each moment. Yet the more he watched, the more he noticed something strange. Ethan's attempts always came with Sofia. Never with anyone else. Never in therapy sessions. Not even with his father, no matter how much love Keanu poured into him. It was as if Sofia carried a key to a locked door inside Ethan's heart. This filled Keanu with gratitude, but also unease. One evening, as he watched Sofia help Ethan stack blocks, in the living room, he found himself studying her carefully. She was kind, patient, encouraging, yet sometimes when she thought no one was looking, her smile faded and her eyes grew distant. Filled with shadows, Keanu wondered what pain she carried. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Keanu invited Sofia to sit with him at the kitchen table. The soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence between them until he finally spoke. Sofia, you've done something for Ethan I thought might never happen. You've given him hope. But I need to understand. Why him? Why do you care so much? Sofia's fingers tightened around the edge of her cup. She looked down, her voice trembling as she spoke. Because he reminds me of my brother. Keanu leaned forward, his heart pounding. Your brother? She nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. When I was a girl, my younger brother, Lucas, couldn't speak either. Not because he couldn't hear, but because life silenced him. Grew up in a house filled with shouting, anger, and fear. My parents never listened, never gave him patience. He shut down, and by the time I was old enough to help, it was too late. He stopped trying completely. He never found his voice. Her words cut through Keanu like a blade. Sofia wiped her eyes quickly. When I saw Ethan, I saw Lucas. I couldn't walk away. I couldn't let another child stay locked in silence when maybe, just maybe, I could help. Keanu sat back, his chest heavy with emotion. Her story explained everything. The patience, the compassion, the fire in her eyes when she spoke to Ethan. It wasn't just work for her. It was redemption. But even as his respect for her deepened, another thought tugged at him. Sofia, why didn't you tell me this before? She hesitated, because sometimes when people hear about the past, they stop trusting you. I didn't want you to think I had some hidden plan. I just wanted to help Ethan. Yana nodded slowly. Her words made sense, but the unease inside him did not fully fade. The next day, something unexpected happened. Ethan came running into the study while Keanu was reading. His little hands waved excitedly as he tried to form a word. His lips moved, and though no clear sound came, his effort made Keanu's eyes shine. Behind him, Sofia entered with a smile. "He wanted to show you his drawing," she said softly. Ethan held up a paper with two stick figures, a tall man with long hair and a small boy holding hands. Above it, written shakily, was one word, Dad. Keanu's single quotes as throat tightened as he took the drawing. This is beautiful, Ethan." He hugged his son tightly, whispering, "You're my greatest gift." Sofia stood quietly, watching them with tears in her eyes. For a moment everything felt right, but peace never lasted long. That night, while Keanu was locking up the house, he passed by the guest room where Sofia stayed. The door was slightly open, and he saw her sitting at the desk, writing in a notebook. Her shoulders were tense, her face pale. He should have walked away, but something made him pause. He heard her whisper under her breath, "I won't fail this time. I won't let him suffer like Lucas, even if it means." Her words trailed off, but they left Keanu unsettled. Even if it means what? Later, he lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Doubts swirled in his mind. Sofia had given his son hope. Yes. But was she trying too hard? Was her pain from the past pushing her into dangerous territory? Was she helping Ethan for Ethan's sake? For her own redemption? The next morning, Keanu decided to test things. He asked Sofia to take the day off while he spent time alone with Ethan. She agreed reluctantly, her eyes clouded with worry. All day, Keanu tried to encourage his son, sat with him, played games, gently whispered words for him to repeat. Ethan smiled, he drew, he played, but he did not try to speak. Not once. That evening, when Sofia returned, Ethan ran into her arms, and almost immediately. He tried again, soft, broken, but clear enough to show his effort. Keanu's heart twisted. Relief and frustration battled inside him. His son's progress was tied to this woman. Sofia glanced at Keanu and seemed to notice his inner storm. "You're wondering why he chooses me?" she said quietly. Keanu didn't answer, but his silence spoke for him. She looked down, her voice low. "Because sometimes it's easier to open up to someone who isn't bound by fear. Ethan loves you more than anything, but he doesn't want to disappoint you. With me, there's no weight of expectation. There's only space." Her words hit Keanu hard. Was it true? Had his love, his desperate hope, become pressure for his son? He walked into the garden alone that night, the cool air brushing against his face. The stars above shone silently, and he whispered into the dark, "Am I?" Failing him without knowing it, and as if the night itself answered, a faint sound drifted from inside the house. Ethan's voice again, shaky, broken, but trying. Keanu's eyes filled with tears. This was no longer just about speech. This was about trust, about patience, about letting go of fear, but deep inside, one question remained: how far would Sofia go to save Ethan from silence? And what hidden cost might come with it? The days turned into weeks, and Ethan's progress continued. It was slow, fragile, but every new sound felt like a small miracle. Sometimes it was just a syllable, other times the faint shadow of a word. And every time it happened, Keanu's heart swelled with pride, his eyes wet with gratitude, yet beneath the joy, unease still gnawed him. Sofia had become the center of Ethan's progress, the quiet flame that lit his son's path forward. Keanu respected her, admired her, but he also feared the weight of her influence. Ethan trusted her in ways he did not trust anyone else, and for a father who had walked through silence and loneliness with his son for years, that truth cut deep. One night, Keanu sat in his study, unable to focus on the script lying open before him. His thoughts circled like restless birds. Finally, he reached for the phone and called Mark, an old friend and someone he trusted to be discreet. "Mark," he said quietly, "I need you to look into someone for me. Her name is Sofia. She's working in my house, caring for Ethan. I need to know everything: her past, her family, her history. I can't risk getting this wrong." Mark didn't ask questions. "Give me a few days. I'll call you when I find something." When Keanu hung up, he felt both guilt and relief. Guilt, because Sofia had been nothing but kind. Relief, because as a father, he could not allow uncertainty around his child. The next morning, something unusual happened. Keanu came downstairs to find Ethan and Sofia sitting together on the floor, a notebook open between them. Ethan had drawn a picture of a small boy holding a balloon, and beside it, a woman smiling. Above the figures in shaky letters were two words. Thank you. Keanu's throat tightened. Ethan had written words of gratitude. Sofia hugged him gently, her voice trembling. You're welcome, Ethan. You're so brave. Keanu stepped into the room, his heart full and heavy at the same time. This is beautiful, he said softly. Ethan beamed, his small fingers curling around his father's hand. But as Keanu looked at Sofia, he saw the flicker again in her eyes, that shadow of pain, the past she still carried. Later that evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Keanu approached her. The house was quiet, the air filled with the faint ticking of the wall clock. Sofia, he said gently, I know about your brother. I know that helping Ethan is also helping you heal. But I need to ask, what else are you carrying? Her body stiffened. She looked down at her hands. Silence stretched until finally she whispered, You're right. I've been hiding something. Keanu's chest tightened. What is it? Her voice trembled. My brother. He didn't just lose his voice. He lost his life. When he was 15, he gave up completely. He couldn't fight anymore. And I felt like I failed him. I wasn't there when he needed me the most. I've carried that guilt every day since. Tears slipped down her cheeks. When I saw Ethan, I swore I wouldn't let history repeat itself. I promised myself I would do whatever it takes to help him, even if it means crossing lines. Keanu's breath caught. Crossing lines? She looked up at him, her eyes desperate. Sometimes I push him too hard. I know it. I see the fear in his eyes when he struggles, but I can't stop myself. I can't let him slip away like Lucas did. The words hit Keanu like a storm. He understood her pain, but the thought of Ethan being pushed too hard, being burdened by someone else's guilt, tore at him. Sofia, he said firmly but gently, you can't let your past become his prison. Ethan is not Lucas. He doesn't need saving from your ghosts. He needs patience, not pressure. Sofia broke down, covering her face with her hands. I don't know how to separate it. When I hear him try, when I see him stumble, all I can think about is my brother's silence. I can't lose another child to that. Keanu placed a hand on her shoulder. You won't lose Ethan. But you need to understand this journey is his, not yours. You can guide him, but you can't carry him. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Keanu saw the full weight of her pain. The following day, Mark called. His voice was steady, but his words carried weight. Keanu, I looked into Sofia's past. Most of it checks out. She worked as a caretaker, volunteered at centers for children with disabilities. But there's one thing you should know. After her brother's death, she became obsessed with helping other children find their voices. Some families said she pushed too hard, others said she crossed emotional boundaries. Nothing illegal, but enough to raise concern. Keanu thanked him and hung up, his mind spinning. He walked into the garden, the cool air brushing against his skin, and tried to steady himself. Sofia had given Ethan hope, but she was also carrying a storm inside her. That evening, while Keanu was preparing dinner, he heard a sudden sound, soft but clear, coming from the living room. Duh, Dad. He froze, the knife slipping from his hand. He rushed in and saw Ethan standing with Sofia, his face flushed from effort. Ethan had said the word again, louder this time, clearer. Filled with courage, tears blurred Keanu's vision as he scooped his son into his arms. Here, Ethan, always. Sofia stood back, her face streaked with tears, her hands trembling. But instead of pride, Keanu saw something else in her expression, fear. And in that moment, he realized that Sofia's fight with her past was far from over. The miracle of Ethan's voice was no longer just a blessing. It was a crossroads one. That could either heal them all or break them apart. The house carried a strange energy after Ethan spoke again. Keanu felt joy beyond words, but beneath it, tension grew like an invisible thread pulling tighter each day. Ethan was trying more often now, short sounds that carried the shape of words. Sometimes he surprised them both with a broken syllable that resembled car or mom. Each effort felt like sunlight breaking through clouds, but Sophia's eyes told another story. She celebrated every success. Yet when Ethan struggled, when the words came out weak or incomplete, her smile faltered. Her hands shook, and her eyes filled with shadows. She carried not only Ethan's hope, but also the ghost of her brother Lucas, and the weight of that guilt was becoming heavier. Keanu noticed it in the smallest ways. Sometimes she leaned too close, urging Ethan again and again until his face reddened with effort. Sometimes she whispered encouragement that sounded more like desperation. One afternoon, Keanu returned from a meeting and stopped outside the living room. He heard Sophia's voice, sharp with urgency. "Try harder, Ethan. You can do it. Don't give up. You'll lose your chance." Ethan whimpered softly, his small hands trembling as he tried to form a word. Keanu's chest ached. He stepped into the room, his voice firm but calm. "That's enough, Sophia." She turned, startled, her face pale. "I was only trying to help. Help doesn't come with fear," Keanu said quietly. He knelt beside Ethan, holding his son gently. "It's okay, Ethan. You don't need to be afraid. Every sound is enough." Ethan leaned into his father, his body relaxing. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, "I didn't mean to frighten him. I just don't want him to stop trying." Keanu's voice softened. "He won't. But he must move at his pace, not yours." That night, after Ethan had fallen asleep, Keanu and Sophia sat across from each other in the kitchen. The silence was heavy until Sophia spoke. "You're right. I've been pushing too hard. But Keanu, you don't understand. When my brother gave up, I lost him forever. I can't watch that happen again." Keanu looked at her with steady eyes. "But Ethan isn't your brother. He's my son. His journey is not about your past. It's about his future. If you keep forcing your pain onto him, you'll break the very miracle you've helped create." Sophia bowed her head, her tears falling silently onto the table. "I don't know how to let go of the guilt." Keanu reached across, placing his hand over hers. "Then let me carry some of it with you. But don't give it to Ethan. He deserves freedom, not chains." The next few days were delicate. Sophia tried to step back, giving Ethan more space. Keanu stayed close, watching every interaction carefully. Sometimes Sophia succeeded in keeping her calm, smiling gently as Ethan attempted words. Other times, the shadows returned to her eyes. She caught herself just before pushing too hard. But the fragile balance broke one evening. Ethan was practicing with Sophia, trying to say the word home. Struggled, his lips moving but no sound coming. His face twisted in frustration, tears filling his eyes. Sophia leaned in, her voice urgent. "Don't stop. You can do it. Say it." Ethan shook his head, covering his ears. His body trembled with fear. Keanu rushed in, pulling him close. "Enough," said sharply, his voice shaking with emotion. Sophia froze, her face pale. I didn't mean." Keanu's voice broke, raw with pain. "He's just a child. He doesn't need to carry your ghosts. I won't let you hurt him, even by accident." Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "Please don't send me away. If I leave, he'll stop trying. I know he will." Keanu's heart twisted. She wasn't wrong, Ethan's. Progress was tied to her presence, but he could no longer ignore the danger. Her love for his son was real, but it was tangled with guilt so heavy it threatened to crush them all. That night, Keanu sat alone in the garden, staring at the stars. He thought about Ethan's smile, the sound of his fragile words, the way his small hand clutched his father's. And he thought about Sophia, her pain, her desperation, her fierce need to save Ethan, as if saving her brother. He whispered into the night, "What do I do? How do I protect my son without taking away the only person who unlocked his voice?" The answer didn't come easily. The following morning, he made a decision. He called Sophia into the study. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Sophia," Keanu said softly but firmly, "you've given my son a gift I can never repay. But right now, your pain is hurting him. I can't risk that. I need you to take some time away, to heal yourself before you come near him again." Sofia's face crumbled. "Please, don't do this. He needs—" "Me?" Keanu's eyes filled with tears, but his voice was steady. "No, he needs peace. He needs love without pressure. I'm grateful for you, Sofia. I always will be. And until you let go of the past, you can't guide his future." She broke down, sobbing silently. Finally, she nodded. "I understand." That evening, she packed her things quietly. Ethan stood by the door, clutching his father's hand, his eyes full of confusion and sadness. Sofia knelt down, tears streaming down her cheeks, and whispered, "Be brave, Ethan. Your voice is waiting for you. I believe in you." Then she left, the door closing softly behind her. The house felt emptier than ever. Ethan pressed his face into his father's chest, silent tears soaking his shirt. Keanu held him tightly, whispering, "It's okay, my boy. We'll keep moving forward, together." But inside, Keanu felt the weight of doubt. Had he made the right choice? Had he protected his son or taken away the very key to his voice? The days after Sofia's departure were heavy with silence. Ethan still drew his pictures, still played with his toys, but the spark that had begun to grow inside him seemed dimmer. He did not attempt to speak, not even broken syllables. His lips remained pressed shut, and his eyes carried a sadness Keanu had never seen before. Keanu tried everything. He sat with Ethan for hours, encouraging him gently, telling him stories, whispering words he hoped his son would try to repeat. Held him close, gave him space, even played their favorite games. But nothing came. Each night, when Ethan finally fell asleep, Keanu would sit in the dark living room, his heart heavy with doubt. Had he made a mistake by sending Sofia away? Had he taken away the one person who had truly reached his son? One evening, as he sat with his head in his hands, Mark visited. The old friend listened quietly as Keanu poured out his fears. "Maybe I pushed her away too soon," Keanu said, his voice raw. Ethan trusted her. I saw it in his eyes. "What if I destroyed his chance to find his voice?" Mark leaned back, studying him. "Keanu, you did what any father would. You protected your son. Sometimes protecting doesn't mean holding tighter. Sometimes it means finding balance. Maybe Sofia needed time to heal too." Keanu sighed. But how long can Ethan wait? Next morning, something happened that changed everything. Keanu woke early to find Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a piece of paper. When he got closer, he saw what his son had drawn. It was a picture of himself and his father. Standing side by side, with another figure beside them, a woman with long hair. Above it, in shaky letters, Ethan had written one word. Sofia. Keanu's throat tightened. His son hadn't spoken the name, but he had written it. He still carried her inside him. Later that day, as Keanu sat in the garden with Ethan, the boy suddenly tugged on his father's sleeve and opened his mouth. A broken sound came out, faint but clear enough to form the start of a word. So, Keanu froze. "Sofia," he asked gently. Ethan nodded, his eyes wet with tears. He tried again. "Sofia." It wasn't perfect, but it was a word. A real word. Keanu's heart cracked wide open. He hugged his son tightly, whispering, "I hear you, Ethan, I hear you." That evening, Keanu made a decision, picked up the phone, and dialed Sofia's number. She answered after a long pause, her voice hesitant. "Hello? Sofia?" Keanu said softly. "He said your name, found his voice again, and I think he needs you. But before you come back, I need to know you're ready. Can't let your guilt lead you anymore. Can you promise that?" On the other end, Sofia sobbed quietly. "Yes, Keanu. I've been waiting, praying for this call. I know now that I can't save Ethan for Lucas. I can only stand beside him. I'll never push him again." A week later, she returned. Ethan ran into her arms the moment she stepped through the door. And for the first time, Keanu felt no fear in the sight. He watched his son whisper her name again, stronger this time. and he saw the joy on Sofia's face, not heavy, but pure and light. From that day on, they worked together not. Sofia leading, not Keanu doubting, but both standing side by side for Ethan. The boy spoke more and more, each word stronger than the last. Sometimes he stumbled, sometimes he fell silent again, but he always tried.
Oh.
And every time he tried, his father and Sofia were there, not pressuring him, not filling him with fear, just giving him the space to grow. Months passed, and the miracle became real. Ethan's voice grew, shaky but steady, quiet but full of life. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, he sat with his father on the porch. Keanu wrapped an arm around him, smiling softly. "Say it again," Keanu whispered. Ethan looked up at him, his eyes shining. "Dad," he said clearly. Keanu closed his eyes, tears falling, his heart full. "I'll never get tired of hearing that." Sofia stood in the doorway, her face glowing with quiet pride. She had found her own healing too, not by saving Ethan, but by walking beside him as he found himself. The silence that once haunted their home had been broken forever, not with noise, but with love, patience, and the courage to keep trying.